Let's talk about thought leadership and research. Now, you're probably thinking about the quantitative research that leads to dense charts and graphs, the data that adds gravitas to white papers and reports. And there's a place for those. But today, I want to talk about qualitative research. Yes, the human side of research. It's easy to forget that amid all the numbers and data points, there are real human insights that can help organizations get a 360 view of their audience. Today's guest is uniquely qualified at finding the authenticity and empathy beyond the numbers. He's Manish Bahl, Chief Executive and founder of Curious Insights, a global market research firm on a mission to humanize research. And I'm eager to talk with him about the process of interviewing executives and providing value both during the interview and the report phases. I'm Bill Sherman, and you're listening to Leveraging Thought Leadership. Ready? Let's begin. Welcome to the show, Manish.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me.
So I want to begin with a question that you and I have talked about before, but I think I want to pull our audience into as well, which is the human side of research. It's easy to fall in love with the numbers and say, let's go get data. What's missing when we just look at numbers on their own?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Bill. If you look at, traditional research, mainly uses a one-dimensional survey data model, which means that what percentage of people are saying what, which is absolutely fine. We really need that, data. That model is extremely important, but we believe a modern research approach should begin more broadly, which means the recognition that companies, products, and services touch nearly every aspect of human lives. And that's where we found human insights to be the missing connective link in the industry. So what we do is basically we apply data plus human insights to put people back at the center of research because it takes more than a survey to truly understand human behavior. So by blending, human science with data collection and analysis allows us to understand not only how customers think and feel, but why they think and feel the way they do. That is extremely important. And just to give you an example, the survey data will tell you how your customers spend their money. But human behavioral focused qualitative insights will reveal the experience they are seeking when they spend and what it is really like for them to use your products and services. And from a corporate world perspective, if you look at you can always look at, the quantitative survey insights, how much IT leaders plan to spend on technology in the next 12 months, which is good to know. But also, we really need to shed light on what makes a good leader in the first place. So by being curious, we begin to understand data rather than just interpreting it, because it pays to be curious at the end of the day.
And that's one of the things where I want to focus a little bit of the time and attention. So there's the classic B2C marketing research data, but you alluded to what I would describe as certainly in tech, but as more B2B, when you're trying to understand the needs of an executive level decision maker and how they see the world today versus what problems they're trying to solve. And I think one of the challenges with thought leadership arises is you may be creating solutions to problems that are not necessarily on their radar yet. You're one step ahead of where they may be. So let's talk a little bit about the interviews with those C-level executives. That's certainly an area where it's precious time, right? And my first question is, okay, you do a survey and you actually get a C-level exec to agree to do an interview with you. How do you get their attention? How do you get them engaged?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Bill. If you look at, at the end of the day, leaders, right? Whether you are a CEO or the CFO or any other C-level executive in an organization, you are still a human being, You have stories to share. Yeah, you have beliefs, you have attitudes, you have motivations, right? And our objective is to, get into those, perspectives rather than just collecting data. So when I get on a call with C-level executives, right, my whole objective is not to conduct an interview, but rather how to build a discussion, how to have a fruitful conversation so that these C-level executives also learn, from what we are seeing in the market. Because at the end of the day, it's a two-way communication. It's not only about me asking questions to them. What do you do and how you are going to handle this situation or that situation. It is more about sharing your own experience with them and having making them feel comfortable about this, about the subject, about the theme that we are talking about. It is extremely important because at the end of the day, we are having a discussion and a conversation. These people agree to spend their precious 30 to 40 minutes time with us, and we want to make sure that they also learn something from the discussion, what we are hearing from other C-level executives. So we have been pretty much open when we talk to them, what we are hearing from others and how their perspective is similar or could be very different from what we are seeing, what we are hearing from the market. So I think it's more about having a conversation and building a discussion rather than just conducting one qualitative interview. That is extremely important, I believe.
So, in your experience, and you may have a story or an example, when is that moment when you know that the interview with the C-level executive is going well? How can you tell? It's like, okay, this is exactly what we want it to be.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point, right? If you look at it, when I'm having a conversation with C-level executives, right, I try to get into details of specific instances. What exactly happened, at a particular moment that triggered, particular thought or data point maybe. But ultimately, we try to get into specific instances, right? Try to get into the context of the situation. Just to give you an example, one of the interviews that I've had recently, with a C-level executive for a large for organization. It's an MNC, and we are talking about digital transformation. Digital transformation has been around for so many years, but still many organizations struggle with it. Digital transformation has less to do with technology and money and more about the culture, more about the nuances that exist in the organization. And when we touched upon this particular aspect, the CXO got very excited and sort of sharing his, stories when they tried to implement a particular project, the kind of challenges that they faced. People were not comfortable. They didn't get much, buy-in from other stakeholders across the organization, and they had a tough time, dealing with the situation to get that project, that technology, implemented. And that technology was meant for the organization and not for any individual. But still, he struggled a lot convincing everyone that why it is important and how it is going to create a competitive edge, for the organization. So all I'm saying is, when you get into such, discussions, right, these guys, they really open up and they are, they have plenty of examples, experiences, right? And we really want to do a deep dive on those experiences rather than just collecting the, couple of data points. So I think that's where if you can make a C-level executive comfortable talking to you, sharing his or her perspective, and in return you also sharing what you are seeing in the market, that's how you build more of a win-win kind of a situation.
So, those opening couple minutes in the interview, right? I would assume are important, and they set the tone and tenor. Are there any things that you intentionally do in that interview or that you're looking for and draw out? How do you get started on a good foot?
Yeah, so the way I get started is basically, I do not want the C-level executive to start, sharing his or her experiences or conversations right from the very first, sentence. First 5 minutes is more about getting that person comfortable. And the way I do it is basically sharing my experience. For instance, if the subject is on digital transformation, I will tell the person, so this is what we are hearing from the market. This is what the CXOs are telling us, right? And we want to hear your perspective. Do you agree with these, perspectives, or you have a altogether, a different take when it comes to the future of your business when it with digital. And that's how the conversation gets started. The person says, oh no, I agree, I don't agree, I'm somewhere in the middle. And that's how we start getting into discussion. Okay, right, why you agree and why do you don't agree, with a particular statement, right, that we have made. So I think first 5 minutes is more about me sharing my experience, what I've been hearing from the market, and also, right, based on my experience as an analyst, right, that I've worked in the past. And that's how we build the conversation, right? And we go with the flow, right? So obviously, there are some specific set of questions that I share beforehand with these C-level executives. But many a times, right, we don't follow the structure at all. If we just go with the flow, and that's the beauty of having these qualitative discussions with C-level executives.
So one of the things that I hear, and it also aligns with my experience, is you have to bring yourself into the conversation. You can't just bring the clipboard and the prompts and hope that you're going to have magically good answers appear in an interview. You've got to be showing some vulnerability first.
Absolutely right, because ultimately we have to understand and respect, these people's precious time, right? If they have agreed to spend 30 minutes with you, right, we want to make sure that they get maximum from this conversation, because it's not a one-way street. At the end, they should also learn, from this discussion rather than they telling us what is happening in their organization. So I prefer to have a two-way, kind of a communication, right, rather than just collecting information and dumping that information to my clients.
So you've spent a lot of time personally in research and interviewing. My question for you is, what have you learned over the course of doing as many interviews as you've had? What has made you a better interviewer?
Yeah. If you ask me, I'm still learning, to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
because no one is perfect, right? And I'm still learning based on each and every conversation that I've had with the C-level executives. But based on whatever that I've learned so far, I believe it is more about being transparent, being very open, and letting the person, speak when it comes to a particular subject, right? I think it's more about transparency and having a open communication rather than having an interview, to be honest. This is what I, learned from my experience. Initially, I used to have more of an interviewer, kind of an approach, getting on a call and asking questions. And then, once all the questions are done, you disconnect. So I think I learned, right? Somehow the connection is not happening, the kind of inputs, right, that I'm expecting, I'm not getting those inputs. So that's how I changed my approach, right? I try not to follow a strict, discussion guide kind of an approach, and usually, go with the flow, right? What the person is more comfortable talking, what he or she is more interested in, sharing, their experiences. So I usually, go with the flow, right? And once I started, doing all this, right, I learned that it is a better approach to do that, because the quality of insights were much more powerful, and we could correlate, some of those insights with the quantitative survey data, that we have got. If they are increasing their spend on a particular technology, why they are doing it. And that's where, when you get into the conversation, you realize, in order to make that investment successful, there are so many qualitative insights, qualitative, issues that organizations need to address. And that's a beauty of having, these kind of conversations. So to me, I think it's more about transparency and having an open conversation rather than just an interview.
So one of the things that I wind up looking for is the spark in the eyes from the person that I'm speaking with, right? You can tell the smile, you can tell the engagement, you can tell the presence. And I think one of the ways that you can do that is through evoking curiosity, that they want to know, they want to hear what you have to say, as well as they want to be heard. Does that resonate for you, or is that what comes to your
No,
mind?
no, it does. It does, in fact, right? Because when I get on, these calls, then obviously they agree to spend 30 minutes with me, right? Obviously, they must have something in their mind as well, what exactly this guy is going to talk about, kind of question that he's going to ask. Will I get something in return or not? So I prefer to have this gift to, get kind of a ratio started in the beginning itself, right? I'm here taking your 30 minutes of your precious time, and in return, you'll be getting all these sort of inputs from my side because I've worked, with an IT services company. I worked as an analyst, and I've been interacting a lot with other C-level executives. So there's a lot, you can learn from the kind of conversations I keep having with other with your peers in the industry, and they get it immediately. Once you start the conversation by having this give to get kind of a ratio starting in the beginning, and in the beginning of the conversation, which I feel it's really powerful, right? Because you get their attention that yes, there is something for me as well. I'm not here just to give information and my thoughts on a particular subject.
So, how do you define thought leadership? I want to talk thought leadership with you. And I think you've got a little bit different perspective. So let's start with definitions and then spar back and forth a little bit.
Yes, to me, I think the thought leadership, should not only reveal how, but also why. And in today's, thought leadership, because I've been interacting a lot with, CMOs, across organizations, right? And I believe one of the biggest challenge in the industry right now, which is so unfortunate, is thought leadership is very much, data driven. Okay. So you are going to conduct surveys with X number of, CXOs, and you will publish those results. But ultimately, what is really missing is what is actually behind, those data points. And that's where the curiosity factor is extremely important to get into the why factor. So why, people are saying what they are saying at the end of the day. So by being curious, we begin to understand data rather than just interpreting it. And that is something which I believe is extremely missing right now when it comes to, thought leadership. And that's where I think companies need to spend more time, money, resources, and everything to ensure they get maximum from their, investments when it comes to, thought leadership. Because at the end, thought leadership is not just, putting across your one point of view. It has so many dimensions, but ultimately what is really missing in the industry, the way I look at it, is the human insights piece in the thought leadership.
So, thought leadership for me is something that is messy. It doesn't have clean edges. It asks questions where people may go, huh, never thought about it that way, right? And one of the things that I see, certainly when you put ideas out in the world, there are some people who will respond to hard metrics and data, and that's exactly where they gravitate to. But I'd say 50, at least 60% of the people that you put an idea in front of, they're looking for a story, an example, a quote, something that helps contextualize, even if it's a case study. What is this insight? What does it mean? And if you can't answer that and all you're giving is raw data, you're losing a large chunk of your audience. And that doesn't matter whether it's C-level execs who have the best B school degrees, or, you're talking in B2C consumer packaged goods, right? People still need to connect with the idea, and only a small percentage of people connect through data.
Absolutely right. Because I still remember, after establishing Curious Insights, one of my first clients, the CMO, obviously I can't name the company or the CMO name, but my initial conversation with the CMO, when I proposed this idea, you guys quite a big organization, but still you do not have any thought leadership presence right in the market, and that's where I can help you. I can help you create some compelling, some powerful thought leadership narratives that is going to help you stand out in the market. And his initial reaction was, okay, Manish, what do you have to sell to me? I was like, okay, fine, this is one idea, right, where I believe it could make a lot of difference to you, to your organization, right? And when you are going to take this idea to the market, then obviously you will be differentiated, and we can help you do that. When he actually heard, this particular idea, he's like, wow, this is really nice. I didn't know that we can do so much. So all I'm saying is, thought leadership. I think it's a responsibility to a large extent, for people like you and me to educate, these people how thought leadership can help them create a competitive differentiation in the market. Thought leadership is not It's not about, putting a blog or a content, piece out and assuming that you are a thought leader in the industry. It is much more than that. What is the story that you have to share? What is the story that your employees have to share? What is the, story that your customers, have to share? So I think bringing all these pieces together, it really helps. So, and that's where I think, organizations need, especially leaders in the marketing space, they need much more guidance and understanding what exactly thought leadership means, because everybody assumes thought leadership in his or on own ways.
If you are enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about the podcast, please leave a 5-star review and share it with your friends. We are available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and all major platforms, as well as at leveragingthoughtleadership.com. Well, and you can do a lot of great research. You can have a great insight and bury it in a white paper on page 35 and almost guarantee that 0% of your target audience will ever see what was created, right? And so, to use your point, how do you take that insight, the one that people will say, wow, and put it into the hands of your sales team, into your customer success team, so that people hear this, understand this, and they say, what if we could do this? How would it change our day, our company, our clients, right? That's that aha moment that you're trying to trigger. And you have to do it through, well, quite simply, a little bit of bait. You've got to get people excited and, to use your word, curious. Because if they're not curious, it's not going to happen. They're not going to dig and try to make sense of your brilliant insight if it feels like a tax return.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right, Bill. Right, but when it comes to curiosity, we can debate for hours, what exactly curiosity means and how to make readers curious.
That's a different episode, but yes.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But to me, I think if you have got something, fresh, something bold, something differentiated, something that I haven't read so far, I think it's going to bring sort of a curiosity factor, as a reader to look at, or rather to read more about the stuff that you are publishing, to be honest, right? And that's where, when it comes to providing thought leadership support to our clients, we are very much focused on creating a differentiated factor and not try to follow what is already being published in the market, because people these days, they have a very short attention span. And if your content, especially the first 5 or 10 lines, are not compelling enough, and obviously nobody's going to pay attention. So thought leadership, I think it's more about having the stories, get the stories right and out in the market, because people love stories. At the end of the day, we are humans, right? And humans love stories. And that's where I think people miss the point. They are more interested in entertaining, the Google SEO engine when it comes to their blogs or to their thought leadership. They are more interested in ensuring that Google is going to rank a particular blog piece, rather than trying to create content that is going to appeal humans at the end of the day. So I think to me, thought leadership should be meant for humans and not for algorithms.
Well, and so you talk about Google and the algorithm, right? And I would argue that a lot of the best thought leadership, when you publish it, isn't already a search term. So people aren't looking for the idea if it's truly thought leadership, right? Because it's the next thing. Now, 6 months or a year later or 2 or 3 years later, all of a sudden there may be a million results for that. But when you start with thought leadership and you have a new perspective on something, it's probably a sleepy corner of the internet. And so you've got to be willing to let go of the algorithm and instead say, I'm going to reach people. I'm going to narrowcast this idea to a specific group of people, and I'm going to make this relatable to them. I'm going to tell them stories. I'm going to catch their attention. And like you said, the first few sentences, we do it all the time, whether we're swiping on our phone, through a feed or something, one or two sentences, and we know whether we're in and click more or we're out, right?
Absolutely. And what really bothers me, to be honest, if you look at these, experienced, right, marketing people who have spent decades, in the industry, many times we have to decline, request when, these companies or marketers, reach out to us. Hey, Manish, we want to leverage you. We want to create some good, compelling, bold content, but we want to make sure that it is SEO friendly, at the end of the day. So we end up sort of declining, their request. Why? Because we don't write for machines at all. Okay, we write for humans. If you really want to leverage it, fine. If you don't, I don't think that we have a good match, at the end of the day. So I think this whole notion of that your blog is or your article or your content is going to rank on a higher side, when it comes to, Google algorithm, it doesn't make any sense to me, to be honest, right? At the end of the day, you should be able to get your message out with powerful stories. Whether Google algorithm likes it or not, it doesn't matter. If people like it, obviously the algorithm is going to follow the trend and will automatically promote, the content that you have got. So you need to target humans and not machines when it comes to thought leadership.
And if you target the right audience, the people
Absolutely.
who are influencers, the people who will spark conversations within their organization or within a professional community, then you get a cascade effect and a multiplier effect. Because one of the things that you cannot do, in my mind, is you cannot take an idea to scale on your own, whether you're a single individual or you're one organization. You've got to have other people that lean in and say, yeah, that's a good idea. I'm going to talk about it too.
And that's where I think, the freshness, the boldness, these aspects really matter when it comes to your thought leadership. What is the fresh idea that you are going to put across, right? Is it just like, hybrid cloud is the future, or artificial intelligence is going to take over many of the, jobs in the future? So what is a fresh idea that you are trying to bring? Can you talk about how AI and automation is going to create new jobs in the future as well? So what are those new jobs that will exist in the future? Can you try to visualize, those new jobs that don't exist today? Can you share your perspectives on those new jobs? So all I'm saying is, something which is going to be fresh, bold, and unique it's sure to get attention, from your audience. There is no doubt about it.
So I love this concept on bold, right? And I think it's a great piece. I think back to when I was in my undergraduate, I studied theater, and I had an acting professor who said, no one ever goes to the theater to watch people just sort of stumble through their lines. They go to the theater because they want to see the 7 deadly sins put on stage, right? And so whatever it is you're bringing to the stage, amp it up and take the pride in that. And I think that's the same for thought leadership in some ways as well. If you put too many weasel words, might be, could be, maybe, potentially, all of a sudden there is no content, and whatever good idea you had is buried below, layers of weasel words.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. And I really like, the way you put it, every thought leadership piece, right, is like going to the stage and performing,
Yes.
And you don't know whether, people are going to like it or not, but you are going to give your best. And how exactly you're going to give your best is to make sure that you are giving something which is going to be, fresh, unique, and something different, right? That something that people haven't seen, in the past. And the same thing goes with thought leadership. I love this concept of, putting your thought leadership, this analogy, of thought leadership being treated same as, an actor, or an artist, going to the stage, right? So definitely, I think it makes a lot of sense. And when you do it, the stakes are high, to be honest. And it's not just like, spending your marketing budget and getting some content out, and have a tick box, right, in your KRAs at the end of the day. It is more about creating something which is something unique and you are really passionate about at the end of the day. So I think at the same time, thought leadership, because personally speaking, I have been very, very passionate about thought leadership, right? That's what I did, when I was in my previous role, right, with one of the IT services majors, right? I spent a lot of time doing thought leadership. I'm being very passionate about it. Why? Because I know if I'm passionate about it, something good is going to come out, at the end of the day. And I think that passion is also to a large extent is missing when it comes to thought leadership. It is more of a KRA, kind of a thing,
Right.
just get the checkbox, done in your portfolio and move to the next item.
Well, and I think it's fair to say that your audience will never be more passionate about your ideas than you are, right? And so if you're like, well, here's my white paper, or we did this study, guess what? Nobody's going to want to read that. Whereas if you're saying, this is a way that this technology leads to more jobs, higher profitability, et cetera, and people are like, oh my gosh, they are on fire. And almost to that edge of will they ever shut up about it, right? There's that one step below being just a little bit obnoxious about the idea that is, I think, where you spark energy and life.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree, right? Because at the end of the day, right, you are going to connect with people, right, through your thought leadership. And ultimately, at the end of the day, right, what is the content? What is the story, that you have to share? And is that story is going to bring, sort of create curiosity, and then people, then definitely they'll be more interested in learning and reading more about, the stuff that you are doing.
So, as we begin to wrap up, I have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
The first one is for organizations that are thinking about rethinking how they do research. What advice would you give them to include that human aspect and that curiosity into that big research study that they're thinking about but haven't pulled the trigger on?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? So as a standard practice, what we do at Curious Insights is when clients reach out to us, right, telling us that, hey, we want to do 500 interviews with CXOs across industries, across regions, we tell them we'll be happy to do that. But why are you restricting yourself to just, these surveys? On top of those 500 interviews, we can also conduct, get you 25, 30 qualitative insights, and those insights, it's going to bring the difference to your research at the end of the day, because data will tell you how and what exactly organizations are doing and how they plan to do it. And the qualitative insights, it's going to create, it's going to reveal the why factor. And that's where you need both at the end of the day. Many a times, clients agree, and sometimes they don't, which is absolutely fine. But our advice to clients is, don't just collect survey data, gather human insights as well, because you need both to get a 360-degree view of your audience. Survey data is, good. There is no doubt about it, but qualitative human insights are meaningful. And when you blend the two, the magic happens. And that's where you get the real insights, what you're looking for, and not just, numbers at the end of the day.
And then my final question. You've been practicing thought leadership and you've alluded to it through this conversation for many years, back with some of the IT analyst firms, staking out positions and learning as you go. My question for you, since you've been in thought leadership as long as you have, what do you wish you knew earlier? And what advice would you have given your younger self?
That's a tough one, Bill. So I would say, definitely, as an analyst, right? Obviously, you are more focused, right? And getting the details, what exactly companies are doing, what exactly organizations are doing, getting those, those quantitative insights, right? But I wish what I could have learned, earlier, right, in my career was more about focusing on, the human insights, aspect, right? Because as an analyst, as an IT services firm, you don't focus on these things, okay? Not at all. You're more focused on data. You're more focused on, what's happening in these organizations, how much you are spending on what, and what is, your expectation on ROI and all that kind of a stuff. But when you get into details, right, from qualitative aspect, you realize that there is so much, to learn, from these organizations. There are so many nuances that exist in organizations that you can't quantify, based on the survey data, based on your quantitative driven, discussions as well. You have to go one level down to understand, what's happening in these organizations. So I think I wish If I had learned more about this human insights aspect earlier in my career, I would have been at a different place. But still, obviously, we all are learning. And I'm happy that I established Currents Insight because our passion is to humanize, research at the end of the day for analyst firms, for organizations, and we help them do that by blending data with qualitative human insights. So that is the key takeaway. When we talk about how exactly we can make research much more powerful for companies.
Fantastic. Thank you for taking time today, Manish.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me. It was a wonderful discussion.
If you're interested in organizational thought leadership, then I invite you to subscribe to the OrgTL newsletter. Each month, we talk about the people who create, curate, and deploy thought leadership on behalf of their organizations. Go to the website orgtl.com and choose Join Our Newsletter. I'll leave a link to the website as well as my LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to hearing what you thought of the show.